The Tyche Dominion had ruled the stars for over 800 years. Their empire stretched across 17 galactic sectors, encompassing over 3,000 inhabited worlds. They were not builders or creators. They were conquerors, pure and simple. Their tall, muscular bodies covered in scales that shifted from deep emerald to midnight blue depending on their mood, the Tyche moved with the dangerous grace of apex predators. Their eyes, vertical slits of amber or crimson, missed nothing and showed even less mercy. Their warships, massive blade-shaped vessels carved from asteroid metal and powered by stolen technology, had become the most feared sight in the known universe. When the Tyche battle fleets appeared in orbit, planets had two choices: surrender or burn. Most chose surrender. Those who didn't became cautionary tales. Earth had been discovered 3 years ago. To the Tyche it was nothing special, just another life-bearing world with rich mineral deposits and a native species to exploit. The humans had put up a respectable fight, but their primitive spacecraft and weapons were no match for Tyche battle. Cruisers. After destroying the major military installations and government centers, the Tyche landed their troops and began the work of resource extraction. Commander Day oversaw the southern continent operations from his command center, a sleek, obsidian structure that towered over the surrounding human settlement. At 2.5 meters tall with scales the color of deep ocean trenches, Day had earned his position through a combination of military brilliance and calculated brutality. Unlike many of his peers who viewed assignment to Earth as a punishment, Day saw opportunity. The humans, while technologically inferior, showed unusual resilience and adaptability. Breaking them properly would earn him recognition among the Dominion leadership. Production is down 7% from last cycle, his second-in-command, Officer Kyo, reported. The human workers are becoming less efficient. Day's scales rippled with annoyance. Reduce their water rations. That usually motivates them. Already. Implemented, Kyo replied. The problem appears to be physical exhaustion. They require more rest than our previous calculations suggested. Weak bodies, weak minds, Day muttered. He crossed to the viewing platform that overlooked the mining operation. Below, hundreds of humans worked in the massive pit, extracting the rare minerals that powered Tyche star drives. Supervisors with neural whips patrolled the edges, ensuring continuous labor. The settlement beyond the mine was a collection of simple structures, once homes and businesses, now little more than barracks for workers. The humans had learned quickly. That resistance meant death. They kept their eyes down, spoke in whispers, and did as they were told, all except the children. Human offspring were a constant source of irritation. Unlike Tyche hatchlings who emerged nearly self-sufficient and instinctively respectful of hierarchy, human children seemed programmed for chaos. They stared openly at Tyche officers, asked questions, and worst of all, touched things they shouldn't. Gia. Kim was 7 years old, with curious eyes and quick hands. Before the invasion, her parents had always praised her intelligence and spirit. Now those same qualities terrified them. Her father, Han, worked as a technician in the mine, maintaining the drilling equipment. Her mother, Sun, processed the extracted minerals in the refinery. Both spent each day in silent fear, not for themselves but for their daughter who couldn't understand why she needed to be invisible. That morning, while being escorted to the children's work area where young humans sorted smaller mineral fragments, Gia had broken away from the group. A new machine had been unloaded from a Tyche supply ship, a massive harvester with articulated limbs that glinted in the sunlight. To Gia, it looked like the robot heroes from the stories her father used to tell her before bed. The guard had turned to discipline another child, and Gia seized her chance. She darted across the open area, reached the harvester, and placed her small hand on its metal surface. It hummed with power, warm under her fingers. For just a moment she remembered life before the tall, scary lizard people came, when touching interesting things was encouraged, not forbidden. "Step away from the equipment, human." The harsh, clicking voice of a Tyche guard froze her in place. 2 more guards appeared, their weapons drawn. Gia tried to run, but a neural net ensnared her, sending her small body crashing to the ground. Word spread quickly through the human settlement. Guards dragged Han and Sun from their workstations. Other workers kept their heads down, but their eyes followed. Filled with a mixture of sympathy and relief that it wasn't their child, Commander Day was informed immediately of the incident. He had been waiting for something like this, an opportunity to reinforce Tyke authority. The mining operation had been too quiet lately. The humans were becoming too comfortable, too predictable. Sometimes fear needed refreshing. Bring them to the central plaza, Day ordered. All workers will witness this. The central plaza had once been the town square, a place where humans gathered for celebrations and community events. Now it served only one purpose: punishment. A raised platform stood at its center, constructed from the rubble of the town's former government building. Han and Sun were forced to their knees at the edge of the platform, neural restraints keeping them immobile but conscious. Hundreds of humans were marched from their workstations and lined up in rows facing the platform. Armed guards patrolled between them, neural whips crackling with energy. Gia was brought last, her small frame dwarfed by the Tyek guards who flanked her. Her eyes found her parents, and for a moment, hope flickered across her face. Her father had always fixed everything. Surely he would fix this too. Commander Day addressed the assembled humans, his translator converting his clicking speech into flat, emotionless human language. Your species continues to display unacceptable behaviors. Interference with Dominion equipment cannot be tolerated. This young one has committed a serious infraction. You will witness the consequence. Han fought against his restraints with sudden, desperate strength. She's just a child, she didn't know. Day turned his amber eyes toward Han. Then she will serve as education for your other offspring. This is mercy, preventing future infractions through clear demonstration. What happened next occurred so quickly that many humans would later say they closed their eyes, unable to watch. But Han and Sun saw everything. They watched as their daughter's life ended before them, her small body crumpling to the platform floor. They experienced a kind of pain unknown to Tyke understanding, a wound deeper than physical, a breaking not just of body, but of something fundamental within the human spirit. The Tyke believed they understood power, they believed they understood fear, but they had never encountered the particular fury that comes when humans witness harm to their children. It was an ancient thing, buried deep in human DNA, waiting to be awakened. As Gia's parents were released from their restraints, Han's face showed nothing. The Tyke guards noted his compliance with satisfaction. They did not recognize the calm before the storm. The winter sun hung cold and distant in the sky as the gathered humans were forced to stand motionless in the central plaza. Guards with neural whips created a tight perimeter, their scaled bodies barely affected by the biting, cold while the humans shivered in thin work clothes. Snow had begun to fall lightly, dusting the ground with white that would soon be stained. Han and Sun remained on their knees at the edge of the platform, the restraint fields humming with blue energy around them. These advanced Tyek devices didn't just hold their bodies. They partially immobilized their nervous systems, leaving them able to watch but unable to move or even close their eyes. The Tyke considered this the perfect punishment, complete awareness without the ability to intervene. Commander Dai stood tall on the platform, his scales shifting to a deep purple that the humans had learned signified satisfaction. Behind him, two guards held Gia between them. The girl's face was streaked with tears, but she wasn't crying now. Instead, she looked at her parents with confusion and trust, still believing somehow that they would save her. "The rules of the Dominion are simple," Day announced, his translator broadcasting the words in flat mechanical tones. "Obedience brings life. Disobedience brings consequences. You humans learn slowly, but you will learn." In the crowd, a mining supervisor named Tay clenched his fists. Beside him, his wife Jin gripped his arm so tightly her knuckles went white. Their own daughter, 9-year-old Mi, was safely hidden among the other children at the back of the crowd. Every parent felt the same horrible thought: that could be my child. Han strained against the restraint field, his muscles bulging with effort. The blue energy crackled and intensified, designed to cause increasing pain with resistance. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cold air. Sun made a small broken sound beside him. The restraint field couldn't silence their voices completely. "Please," she whispered. "She's just a little girl." Day turned his amber gaze toward her. "That is precisely why this lesson is necessary. Your offspring must learn obedience from the beginning. He gestured to the guard holding a neural pulse weapon. Proceed. What happened next was meant to be simple, quick, instructive. The Tyke had performed similar demonstrations on dozens of conquered worlds. The pattern always followed the same trajectory. Shock, then overwhelming fear, then absolute submission. The pulse weapon would end the child's life painlessly. The Tyke weren't needlessly cruel, merely efficient, and the community would learn its place in the natural order. But something changed as the guard raised his weapon. The crowd didn't gasp or cry out. Instead, a strange silence fell over the assembled humans. Not the silence of fear, but something deeper, more primal. Later, the Tyke would review their sensory recordings and note that human heart rates throughout the crowd had synchronized at that moment. Hundreds of hearts beating as one, like a gathering storm. The weapon discharged with a high-pitched whine. Gia's small body crumpled to the platform floor, a puppet with cut strings. The snow beneath her began to turn red. Sun screamed, a sound so raw and agonized that even some of the Tyke guards flinched. Han went completely still. His eyes, fixed on his daughter's body, changed in some indefinable way. The light within them didn't dim. It hardened, crystallized into something new. And then the impossible happened. The restraint field around Han flickered. Tyke technology was flawless, built on principles of physics that humans didn't even understand. The fields couldn't be disrupted without specialized equipment. They certainly couldn't be broken by mere biological force. Yet, as the Tyke guards watched in disbelief, the blue energy surrounding Han began to spark erratically. His muscles strained, veins standing out on his neck and forehead. Blood began to trickle from his nose, his ears, the corners of his eyes, the physical consequence of fighting against technology designed to subdue creatures 3 times stronger than humans. Increase restraint power, Day ordered sharply, his scales shifting to alert orange. A guard adjusted the controls on his wrist panel. The field around Han intensified, now glowing almost white. Han should have collapsed in agony. Instead, he rose to his feet, with a sound that was barely human. Part scream, part roar. Han Kim broke free of the restraint field. The energy dispersed in a shower of blue sparks as he lunged forward. Before anyone could react, his hands closed around the throat of the nearest guard. The Tyke scales offered little protection against the fury in Han's grip. The alien's eyes bulged as his windpipe collapsed. The second guard raised his weapon, but Han was moving with impossible speed, driven by something beyond normal human capability. He wrenched the neural whip from the dying guard's belt and lashed out. The second guard fell, body convulsing as his own weapon overloaded his nervous system. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. The humans in the crowd stood frozen, equally terrified, and amazed. The Tyke guard seemed paralyzed by the sheer impossibility of what they were witnessing. Commander Day himself stared at Han with an expression that on a human face might have been fascination. That moment of stunned inaction ended when Han turned toward Day. His eyes were no longer those of a broken man, but something else. Something that made even the battle-hardened commander step back. Han took 1 step forward, blood still streaming down his face, the stolen neural whip crackling in his hand. 10 stun bolts hit him simultaneously. Han's body jerked and fell, muscles spasming uncontrollably as the crowd finally broke its silence. A low murmur spread through the assembled humans, not panic or fear, but something that sounded almost like relief, as if they had witnessed something important, something that changed everything. Commander Day stepped forward, looking down at Han's unconscious form. Any other commander would have ordered immediate termination. The human had killed 2 Tyeki, guards with his bare hands, an offense that had only one punishment throughout the Dominion. But Day had not risen to his position by being predictable. "Take him to the research facility," he ordered. "Full bioscan, neural mapping, stress hormone analysis. I want to understand what just happened." Officer Kyo stepped forward, scales flickering with concern. "Commander, protocol demands execution for attacking Dominion personnel." "Protocol exists to serve the Dominion, not the other way around," Day replied. "This human just did something our scientists classified as physically impossible. I want to know how." He turned to another guard. The female goes to isolation. Separate detention units. As Han was dragged away, Sun finally broke free of her own restraint field, not through physical force, but because the guard controlling it had been distracted by the spectacle. She ran not toward her husband, but to her daughter's body, gathering the small form in her arms. No guard stopped her. Perhaps even the Tyke recognized some boundaries. The humans were marched back to their barracks as cleanup drones moved in, to erase the evidence of what had happened. By nightfall, the central plaza was empty again, the snow pristine and white as if nothing had occurred. But something had changed. In dimly lit barracks across the settlement, humans spoke in whispers about what they had seen. Han Kim, an ordinary technician with no military training, had broken through Tyke restraint technology and killed 2 guards before being subdued. If one man could do that. More importantly, the Tyke had not executed him immediately. That deviation from protocol revealed something the humans had not seen before: curiosity, perhaps even uncertainty. In the research facility on the outskirts of the settlement, Han lay unconscious on an examination table, surrounded by Tyke medical equipment. Commander Day watched through a viewscreen as scanners passed over the human's body, collecting data that would soon reveal an uncomfortable truth. The Tyke did not understand humans nearly as well as they thought they did, and in understanding, an enemy lies the first seed of fear. Deep beneath the ruins of what had once been Seoul, General Su reviewed the encrypted message for the 3rd time. Her command center, carved from abandoned subway tunnels and reinforced with scavenged alien metal, hummed with quiet activity as analysts and communications specialists worked at salvaged equipment. The soft blue glow of screens provided most of the illumination in the underground facility. "Play it again," she ordered, pushing a strand of gray-streaked hair behind her ear. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a grainy image of a human woman with haunted eyes. The resistance operative spoke quickly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Southern Settlement 5, public execution of a child, age 7, named Jia Kim. Parents forced to watch. Father broke Tyke restraints, confirmed by multiple witnesses. Killed 2 guards before capture. Not executed. Taken to research facility instead. This is significant. Sending full details through secondary channel." The message ended, leaving General Su staring at the empty air where the hologram had been. Around her, the command staff waited silently. They had all seen too much in the 3 years since the invasion to react with horror anymore, but a child's execution still cut deep. "The father broke through a Tyke restraint field?" Colonel Jin asked, his voice skeptical. "That's not possible. Those things can hold a charging rhino." "Apparently it is possible," Su replied, "and more importantly, the Tyke think it's significant. Enough to study rather than following their standard execution protocol." She turned to her intelligence chief. "What do we know about this man, Han Kim?" Captain Yuna consulted her tablet. "No military background. Agricultural engineer before the invasion, repurposed as a maintenance technician for mining equipment. No prior security flags. Completely ordinary." "No one who can break Tyke technology is ordinary," Su said. "And no Tyke commander changes protocol without good reason." She stood up, her compact frame radiating authority despite her age. At 62, Su had been just weeks from retirement when the invasion began. Now she commanded what remained of Earth's organized resistance. "This is the opportunity we've been waiting for," she continued. "The Tyke think they understand us completely. They've categorized humanity as predictable, manageable. This incident suggests otherwise, and it's rattled them." "What exactly are you suggesting, General?" asked Major Lee. "The tactical operations." "Leader." Su moved to the central planning table, activating its surface with a touch. A detailed map of the southern settlement appeared, with the Tyke research facility highlighted in red. "I'm suggesting we extract Han Kim." The command room fell silent. "That facility is in the middle of their highest security zone," Jin protested. "We'd need a full strike team, air support." "No," Su interrupted. "We need something they won't expect. A surgical team, minimal personnel, maximum stealth." She looked around the room. "And we need it to happen tonight, before they complete whatever analysis they're running on him." Within 30 minutes, the operation was taking shape. Captain Yuna had accessed the resistance network to activate their deepest cover operative in the settlement, a human doctor named Jun, who had earned limited Tyke trust by helping them understand human physiology. Meanwhile, Major Lee selected his extraction team, 4 former Special Forces soldiers who had trained extensively with scavenged Tyke technology. "This is still a near-suicide mission," Jin warned as the team prepped their equipment. Their weapons, a hybrid of human and Tyke technology, were designed specifically to overcome alien defenses. "Maybe," Sue acknowledged, "but there's something else happening here that we need to understand. This incident with Han Kim has created a ripple effect." She gestured to a communications specialist who brought up a series of intercepted Taiki transmissions. "They've increased security at all settlements. They're running new psychological evaluations on human workers. They're even reviewing their restraint field technology." "They're afraid," Yuna realized. "Not afraid, not yet," Sue corrected, "but uncertain. For a species that bases its entire conquering strategy on absolute psychological dominance, uncertainty is a crack in the foundation." As darkness fell, the extraction team departed through the tunnel network that the Resistance had painstakingly mapped out over the past 3 years. These narrow passages, some natural, some created by humans long before the invasion for various infrastructure needs, had become the lifeblood of the Resistance. The Tyke, with their larger frames and dislike for confined spaces, rarely ventured into them. Meanwhile, across what remained of human territory, a carefully orchestrated communication spread through hidden channels. No direct mention of the operation, that would be too risky, but something more subtle. The story of Han Kim, the ordinary man who had done the impossible when his child was taken from him. By morning, every human settlement on Earth would know his name. In the Tyke research facility, Han lay semi-conscious on an examination table. Sophisticated scanners analyzed his brain patterns, muscle tissue, and biochemistry. Commander Day observed, from behind a transparent barrier, his amber eyes narrowed in concentration. "Explain these readings," he demanded of the Tyke scientist beside him. "The human's adrenal response exceeded our established parameters by 320%, the scientist replied. His muscle tissues were receiving neural signals at an accelerated rate that our models didn't predict was possible in their species. And his pain response was effectively suppressed, not diminished but completely overridden by another neurological process." "Meaning what exactly?" Day pressed. The scientist's scales shifted to a color that indicated professional uncertainty, a rare admission for a Tyke. "Meaning our understanding of human neurophysiology under extreme emotional stress is incomplete. The restraint fields are designed based on predictable biological responses. This human's responses were unpredictable." Outside the facility perimeter, 4 shadows moved silently through the night. They wore modified Tyke sensor blocking suits, technology originally designed for the aliens' own stealth operations, now repurposed by human engineers. Their leader, Major Lee himself, checked his wrist display, which showed a detailed schematic of the facility's security systems. Inside, Dr. Jun moved through his normal evening routine, checking on human test subjects with practiced efficiency. The Tyke guards had grown accustomed to his presence. When he entered the high-security wing where Han was being held, no one questioned him. The Tyke never imagined that a human would risk his life infiltrating their facility. Their psychological models indicated humans were too focused on self-preservation. Their models were wrong. The extraction happened with precision timing. As Jun administered a seeming sedative to Han, actually a stimulant designed to counteract the Tyke drugs, the facility's power grid experienced a targeted failure. Backup systems engaged immediately, but for exactly 47 seconds, certain. Security protocols were forced to reset. In those seconds, the extraction team breached the outer wall using sound-suppressed charges. They moved through the temporary blind spots in the security grid, neutralizing 2 guards with modified neural stunners. No alarm sounded. The system was still recalibrating. By the time Commander Dai realized something was wrong, Han Kim was already being guided through the narrow maintenance tunnels beneath the facility. By dawn, he would be in General Su's command center, providing invaluable intelligence about Tyche research priorities and security protocols. But more importantly, he would become a symbol. Proof that the invincible Tyche could be beaten, proof that their technology could be overcome, proof that human determination, especially when driven by the most primal instinct to protect one's children, was a force the aliens had dangerously underestimated. In their orbital monitoring station, Tyche analysts noted unusual movement patterns in human populations across 3 continents, small gatherings dispersing too quickly to track, unexplained power fluctuations in supposedly abandoned urban centers, communication bursts too brief to decode, typical migration adjustments, the senior analyst concluded, his scales a confident blue. Humans always become more restless at the change of seasons. No one suggested an alternative explanation. No one dared consider that perhaps the conquered species was not as broken as they believed. The Tyche had ruled 12 worlds before Earth, and each had followed the same pattern of resistance, subjugation, and eventually compliance. Surely humans would be no different. Deep underground, General Su looked at the face of Han Kim. Now, conscious, determined, and filled with a purpose that transcended personal vengeance. She recognized that look. It was the same expression she saw increasingly in her resistance fighters, her intelligence agents, her engineers. The quiet, resolute certainty of a species that had decided enough. The storm was coming. The Tyche just didn't know it yet. The first sign that something was wrong came when the water recycling systems in the Tyche command centers began to fail. Not dramatically. There were no alarms, no obvious malfunctions, just a subtle shift in the chemical balance that left the water with a slightly metallic taste. For a species whose body chemistry required precise hydration, this small change was deeply unsettling. Then came the environmental adjustments. The temperature in Tyche quarters rose by 2 degrees. The humidity dropped 5%. The air filtration systems allowed slightly more particulate matter than normal. None of these changes were life-threatening or even immediately noticeable to human observers. But to the Tyche, whose reptilian biology demanded environmental precision, the cumulative effect was like a constant mild headache, impossible to ignore. In his command center, Commander Day reviewed the technical reports with growing irritation. His scales had taken on a dull greenish tinge, a sign of stress that he couldn't entirely control. These are systemic failures across multiple independent systems, he told his senior staff. Find the connection. But there was no connection. To find, what the Tyche couldn't realize, was that they were experiencing the first phase of a plan 3 years in the making. Beneath the settlement, in hidden chambers and forgotten tunnels, humans had been gathering intelligence since the first day of occupation. Workers assigned to maintenance duties had memorized the layout of every pipe, every conduit, every circulation system. Technicians had studied Tyche technology, learning its vulnerabilities. Medical assistants had observed Tyche physiology, noting their sensitivities and biological requirements. General Su had called it Operation Ghost Touch, a campaign of subtle sabotage designed to create discomfort and confusion without triggering a violent response. The resistance had waited patiently for the right moment to implement it. Jia Kim's death had been that moment. 2 days after the water began to taste strange, the Tyche communication network experienced unexplained delays. Messages between outposts took seconds longer to transmit. Security footage buffered occasionally. Sensor readings flickered between normal and slightly abnormal values. "It's coordinated," Officer Kyo insisted during the emergency meeting. "These cannot be random equipment failures." Commander Dai's scales darkened with anger. "That's impossible. The humans don't have the capability to affect our systems. Our technology is centuries beyond theirs. Perhaps we should consider the possibility that we have underestimated them," Kyo suggested carefully. "Nonsense," Day dismissed him. "Increase security patrols and run a full diagnostic on all primary systems. This is likely just atmospheric interference." But it wasn't atmospheric interference. In a hidden command center 50 kilometers away, a team of human engineers monitored the effects of their handiwork. Former telecommunications experts, now resistance fighters, had spent years developing specialized viruses that could infiltrate Tyche systems without triggering security protocols. The aliens' overconfidence had been their weakness. They had never bothered to completely overhaul the existing human infrastructure they'd built upon, assuming their security measures were impenetrable. General Sue studied the data flowing across her screens. Phase 1 is complete, she announced to her staff. Begin Phase 2. Phase 2 was more direct, more visible. Across the southern continent, carefully placed explosives detonated simultaneously at 27 key locations. Not major command centers or heavily defended installations. The targets were power distribution nodes, secondary communication relays, and water purification facilities. Infrastructure that would cripple Tyche operations without causing casualties that might trigger a genocidal response. In the Tyche settlement, alarms finally blared. Emergency lighting bathed the command center in harsh red. Commander Day watched in disbelief as system after system reported critical failures. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Where are they getting the weapons, the expertise?" The answer came from an unexpected source, a junior analyst who had been studying human cultural archives. "They never stopped fighting," she said quietly. "They just changed how they fought." Day turned to her, scales rippling with agitation. "Explain." In human military history, there's a concept called strategic patience. When outmatched in conventional warfare, they don't surrender. They adapt. They wait. They prepare. She brought up a historical file on her screen. They've done this before, against each other. They're not fighting like the other species we've conquered, because they're not like the other species. Before Day could respond, the settlement's defensive shields flickered and died. In the distance, the sound of explosions echoed across the compound. The main assault had begun. Human resistance fighters, armed with modified Tyche weapons and wearing improvised armor, emerged from hidden tunnels throughout the settlement. They moved with precision and purpose, neutralizing guard posts and securing strategic points. These weren't random attacks or desperate last stands. These were coordinated military operations executed by trained soldiers. At the spearhead of the assault on the main command center was a small team led by Han Kim. No longer the broken man who had been dragged away for experimentation, he moved with deadly purpose. The neural mapping the Tyche had performed on him had revealed something unexpected. Humans under extreme emotional stress could access physical capabilities far beyond their normal limits. What the aliens hadn't realized was that this knowledge, extracted from Han's unwilling body, had been turned against them. General Sue had authorized the use of experimental compounds that temporarily induced similar neurological states in volunteer fighters. The result was human soldiers operating at peak physical capacity, ignoring pain, fear, and exhaustion. They wouldn't last long at this level. The compounds ensured that, but they didn't need to. They just needed to reach Commander. Day inside the command center, Day ordered a full lockdown. "Prepare for evacuation," he told his staff. "Get to the emergency shuttles." "What about the settlement?" Officer Keogh asked. "Initiate cleansing protocol," Day ordered coldly. "No evidence, no witnesses. Cleansing protocol, the complete destruction of the settlement and all its inhabitants, human and Tyche alike. It was the ultimate failsafe designed to prevent alien technology from falling into native hands if a conquest went wrong. It had never been used before. Keogh hesitated, his scales flickering with doubt. "Commander, this violates Dominion directive. The resource value will be meaningless if we lose control of this planet." Day cut him off. "The directive is clear. If control cannot be maintained, evidence must be eliminated." What Day didn't know, couldn't know, was that the cleansing protocol had already been compromised. 6 months earlier, a resistance operative had accessed the command center's central systems and installed a subtle modification. The activation codes would appear to work, but the actual detonation sequence would fail. As Day entered his authorization, the system responded with green confirmation lights. In reality, nothing happened. The command center doors blew inward, with a thunderous explosion. Tyche guards raised weapons, but the humans were faster, enhanced reflexes allowing them to fire with uncanny accuracy. Han Kim led the assault team into the heart of the facility, his face a mask of focused rage. When he finally stood before Commander Day, the Tyke commander saw something in the human's eyes that he had never seen in any other conquered species. Not hatred, not fear, but absolute resolve. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," Han said simply. Day's scales shifted to battle red as he drew his sidearm. "Your species cannot overthrow the Dominion. This is merely a temporary setback." "You still don't understand," Han replied as he raised his weapon. "We're not fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for our children, for their future. That's something your species never comprehended." In his final moments, as Han's modified pulse weapon discharged, Commander Day finally understood the critical error in the Tyke conquest strategy. They had assumed that breaking a species' will to fight for themselves would break their will entirely. They had never encountered a species that would endure any suffering, any hardship, any odds, not for personal survival, but for the survival of their young. The lesson came too late. As day fell, similar scenes played out across Earth. The Tyke occupation, built on fear and psychological domination, collapsed when faced with a different kind of strength, the implacable determination of a species fighting for its children's future. In the snow outside the command center, a small memorial had been erected where Jia Kim had died. As the liberated settlement emerged from hiding, many stopped to place small tokens beside it, a silent acknowledgement that the path to freedom had begun with one child's sacrifice and one father's refusal to accept it. The massive Tyke warship emerged from hyperspace with a flash of blue-white light, its blade-shaped silhouette blocking out the stars as it approached Earth orbit. Smaller vessels followed, 20 battlecruisers, each capable of reducing a city to ash. The fleet deployment represented the largest military force the Dominion had sent to any conquered world in 2 centuries. Admiral Rock stood on the command deck, his scales a deep purple of determination. Through the view screen, the blue-green planet rotated slowly, seemingly peaceful from this distance. Reports from surviving Tyke forces had been fragmented, contradictory, and increasingly desperate. The Admiral had expected to find a planet in chaos, with isolated pockets of human resistance, to be methodically crushed. Instead, his sensors detected something impossible: organized defensive positions. Salvaged Tyke weaponry mounted on repurposed human satellites, electromagnetic shields protecting key population centers, and most disturbing of all, active communication between these defensive positions, evidence of a coordinated strategy. "Send the standard surrender demand," he ordered. "Inform the humans that resistance will result in planetary sterilization." His communications officer hesitated. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. They're requesting diplomatic talks." The notion was so absurd that Admiral Rock nearly laughed. In the 800-year history of the Tyke Dominion, no conquered species had ever been granted diplomatic status. The natural order was clear: the strong conquered, the weak submitted. Negotiation implied equality, an impossibility between predator and prey. "Ignore it," he commanded. "Prepare orbital bombardment of their defensive positions." "Sir," his tactical officer interrupted, "our scans indicate that the human defenses include captured Tyke antimatter arrays. If we initiate bombardment, they appear capable of returning fire." Now Rock's scales shifted to orange, the color of uncertainty. Antimatter technology was among the Dominion's most closely guarded weapons. That humans had not only captured such weapons but managed to make them operational suggested a level of technical adaptation that should have been beyond their capabilities. "Show me the prisoners," he demanded. The view screen changed to show the holding cells on the few Tyke outposts still under their control. Captured Tyke officers sat in human-designed containment fields, alive and apparently unharmed. This, too, defied Dominion experience. Conquered species who managed temporary victories typically slaughtered their captors in revenge. These humans were treating prisoners according to some code of conduct the Admiral didn't understand. "Play the message," he finally ordered. "General." Sue's face appeared on the screen. Despite her age and the exhaustion evident in her features, her voice was steady and confident. "To the Tyke Fleet Commander, we propose an immediate cessation of hostilities and the establishment of diplomatic relations between our species. We have no desire for further bloodshed, but we will defend our planet and our children with all available means. As evidence of our sincerity, all Tyche prisoners will be treated humanely and returned once agreement terms are established. We await your response." The message ended, leaving the command deck in stunned silence. "It's a deception," one officer suggested. "They cannot possibly have the military capability to challenge our fleet." Admiral Rock studied the tactical display, noting the distribution of human defenses. Their strategy was unusual. They had concentrated on protecting population centers rather than military assets. They weren't fighting to win in the traditional sense, they were fighting to survive. "Send a reply," he finally decided. "Inform them that I will meet with their representative." 1. Location, limited personnel. 3 days later, a small Tyche shuttle descended toward the designated meeting point, a flat plain outside what had once been the human settlement where Jia Kim had died. The shuttle's sensors showed something unexpected. A small structure had been erected at the center of the field. Not a defensive position or weapons platform, but what appeared to be a monument of some kind. Admiral Rock, accompanied by 4 guards, emerged from the shuttle cautiously. The air was cool, the sky partly cloudy. In the distance, a human transport vehicle approached. General Su had insisted on coming personally, despite her advisor's concerns. She had lived through the invasion, the occupation, and now the liberation. Whatever happened next, she needed to witness it firsthand. As the 2 leaders approached each other, both stopped to observe the monument between them. It was simple, a stone pillar with a child's face carved into it. Below was an inscription in both human and Tyche languages. "Jia Kim, age 7, may her memory teach us all." "Explain this," Rock demanded, gesturing toward the monument. Su looked at him steadily. "She was executed by your forces for touching a piece of equipment. Her death became the catalyst for our resistance." Rock's scales rippled with confusion. "One immature offspring? This was your motivation for planetary rebellion?" "That's what your people never understood about us," Su replied. "We will endure almost any hardship ourselves, but threaten our children, and you will face every human as if they were a force of nature." The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in Tyche history. Humans did not ask for Tyche technology or resources. They simply demanded the right to raise their children in peace on their own terms. They offered trade, cultural exchange, even limited military cooperation against mutual threats, but absolutely refused any scenario where Tyche authority would extend over human offspring. The most surprising development came 3 weeks into the negotiations, when a delegation of younger Tyche officers requested to speak privately with Admiral Rock. Their spokesman, a mid-level commander named Tyle, presented findings that shook the foundation of Dominion conquest philosophy. "Our studies of human historical records show something our conquest protocols never accounted for," Tyle explained, his scales the blue-green of intellectual consideration. "Species that prioritize offspring protection above self-preservation develop different social structures. They innovate faster. They cooperate more effectively under threat. The humans didn't break when we applied standard psychological pressure because their primary motivation isn't individual survival." Rock listened with growing unease. "What are you suggesting?" "That our conquest methodology is fundamentally flawed when applied to species with human-type child-rearing instincts," Tyle replied. "And more importantly, that our method of ruling through fear is inherently unstable. The humans aren't just fighting us, they're showing us the weakness in our entire imperial system." As the negotiations progressed, something unexpected began to happen in the temporary settlement that had sprung up around the meeting place. Tyche personnel and humans started to interact beyond the formal talks. Cultural exchanges occurred spontaneously. Young Tyche scientists expressed interest in human art, music, and literature, particularly stories about family bonds, a concept alien to their own reproduction-focused biology. A young Tyche researcher named Lien became fascinated by the concept of human grief. "Your species experiences negative emotional states when offspring die, even offspring not genetically related to you," she observed to Dr. Jun, who had returned to his medical duties. This seems biologically counterproductive, yet it appears to strengthen your social cohesion. Grief isn't just negative, Jun explained. It's also how we honor what we've lost. It's how we remember what matters most. 6 months after Admiral Sue Rock's arrival, the unthinkable happened. The Tyche Dominion signed its first treaty, recognizing the sovereignty of a conquered species. Not out of weakness, but out of a dawning recognition that their model of galactic conquest had encountered its natural limit. The monument to Jia Kim became the center of a new settlement, not purely human or Tyche, but a place where the two species could meet, trade, and learn. Sun Kim, who had survived the occupation and liberation, requested permission to work there as a cultural liaison. When asked why she would want to be so close to painful memories, her answer was simple. Because my daughter's death should mean something more than vengeance. It should mean a new beginning. As the first stars became visible in the evening sky, Admiral Rock stood alone before the monument. His scales shifted slowly through colors that had no direct translation in human terms, something between acknowledgement and regret. Your species is teaching mine something we never expected to learn, he said quietly to General Sue, who had approached silently. That true strength isn't measured by how much fear you can inspire, but by what you're willing to sacrifice for those who cannot protect themselves. Sue looked up at the stars, thinking of all the other worlds the Tyche had conquered, all the other species who might now have a chance at freedom. Then perhaps Jia didn't die for nothing, she said. As news spread throughout the galaxy that the mighty Tyche Dominion had not only been fought to a standstill, but had actually signed a treaty with a conquered species, other subjugated worlds began to stir, not with violent rebellion, but with a new understanding of their own power, the power that comes not from weapons or technology, but from the unbreakable bonds between generations. The age of ruling by fear was ending. Something new was beginning, the end.